Good morning, people of the internet. You are listening to Debi Radio 79.5 FM, a podcast where we discuss the movie Grosse Pointe Blank 1 minute at a time. I'm Dev.
And I'm Hugh, and on today's show, we are going to be looking at minute 45 as we see just exactly what you can do wrong with a microwave in an American grocery store.
Joining us on today's show, we have Jon Straw. And Jon Straw, where can we find out more about you? Tell us all about your super exciting upcoming Movies by Minute enterprise. But you'll definitely not get out of recording.
Well, you got it out of me. I'm actually I owe a response to my friend who I'm hoping to wrangle into this as a co-host. But he and I have been talking for a few months about our mutual love of the David Twohy Riddick universe, and so obviously we would start with the film Pitch Black, and then go through the various sequels and animated spin-offs. He and I were talking about how we would potentially cover the video games, which are an interesting thing in and of themselves. So yes, I have ambitions to start recording that if we can get schedules together in the late spring, and start putting out episodes over the summer. So like I was saying, we're in the planning paralysis phase, but I'm feeling like we're getting to the point where I might actually have to do something. So that's a little intimidating, but continuing to work on that.
Okay.
Fantastic. I'm super excited for that. I love
me too.
Pitch Black in particular.
Yes, I just finished reading the novelization, which is
excellent.
A very, very interesting artifact, because you can tell it was written several drafts earlier in the scripting process.
Right. That's one thing with Grosse Pointe Blank. I wish there had been things like novelizations and stuff, like ancillary material that we could have drawn on for this, because there just really isn't, and it's such a shame, because I want more of this world.
I think that's an opportunity right there for you to write the official novelization of Grosse Pointe Blank 30 years later.
Wow.
That would not go well. That would not go well.
You can include all of those imagined sequences that you've discussed on the podcast.
That's a fair point.
I think, what we're really gunning for is we want there to be a special edition Blu-ray remastered of the film, and we want to do the commentary.
Yes, I know you've mentioned this before, and I was doing some research. I was reading some reviews of the different releases of Grosse Pointe Blank, and someone, I think it was on DVD Talk, they referenced.
Oh, I remember DVD Talk. Yeah,
they referenced The Cable Guy as a similar film from the 90s that got a full featured special edition release with audio commentaries and behind the scenes features and new interviews conducted with the cast. And I maybe I'd have to look at the numbers. Maybe The Cable Guy was a little bit bigger of a hit than Grosse Pointe Blank at the time, but I think they have some shared DNA of the films that were really big or at least significant to me in the mid 90s. But nobody really talks about The Cable Guy anymore. And it's similar to Grosse Pointe Blank, a great film to revisit.
Yeah, I think they're both films that really hit it off in the rental market, right? Yeah.
So the big difference is studios. The thing about Grosse Pointe Blank is it's gotten lost in the mix of stuff that has ended up under Disney's name currently. And as we know, until very recently, Disney was pulling out of the physical media game. However, they are now moving back in, and this is a film that they obviously have a decent master for Disney Plus streaming. So there is the potential out there for something to be done. It's just a question of whether any of the number crunchers run the numbers and see, benefit to this one. I mean, personally, I think this film deserves it. I think it needs it. I think it's a cult film, but that's exactly the sort of thing that sells these days through boutique labels. But the thing is, this is kind of every boutique label I know has almost no pull whatsoever to get anything out of the Disney machine.
Yes.
Either
Yeah,
Disney
I
do it
think
themselves or...
what we really need is Jon Cusack to be courted for a Marvel role.
Precisely.
And
You
then
have nailed it.
And then once he has the in with Disney, he can use his influence to get some of his back catalog better developed.
I think he said fairly publicly that he will never be seen in spandex.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he won't do Marvel. But the thing is,
Yeah.
I can see him doing, I mean, mad scientist role, but he would make a good villain.
Oh, you know what? I'd love that. I would love that.
And he's played a lot of villains in the past, 10, 15 years in his
but in terms of the kind of
direct-to-video days.
Yeah. But he would fit very nicely into either the Doctor Strange universe of Marvel, right? I can see him doing something like that, or switch it up completely and, have those spook vibes that he has, have him brought in, like, I don't know, they've got to make Thunderbolts and or whether or not Florence Pugh gets her own Black Widow film. But the point is, I can see him slotting nicely into that universe. I mean, he would have been a really good, like if they hadn't cast Stanley Tucci, he would have been really good in Captain America.
Yeah.
That scientist role is, you can, because there's something about Cusack that we all know which period he's from, but he actually, to my way of thinking, does quite well as in period drama. Like, maybe it's just because I've seen him do westerns and I think he's good in westerns.
Yeah, but, I tried watching The Raven earlier this week, and it's an interesting acting choice. He played as Edgar Allan Poe very over the top to show his character quirks. I wouldn't say it was necessarily out of place in the period drama, but Jon Cusack's performance was in a different place than all the other actors in the film.
Yeah,
it's also an odd casting choice, knowing Edgar Allan Poe's character.
Yes,
to have Jon Cusack of all people play this weird, round-headed, chinless guy that had no presence at all.
They're not casting him to be the guy that Poe. They're casting him because everybody from the 90s goes, "Hey, Cusack's the goth Gen X."
I think not to take it too far afield from the minute, but I think that Jon Cusack still has a renaissance ahead of him. He makes films like Love and Mercy that where he just shows a phenomenal acting performance, and I think if we've seen him in this film and in High Fidelity, he has a great deal of skill as a writer, and if he gets that right combination of funding and collaborators where he can take a project that he's really passionate about, because I think as much as it's fun to dream about him being playing a villain or something in the Marvel universe, like you say, Jon Cusack as an actor has a strong vision for what his career should be, and I don't think a franchise role is that.
Yeah, that's
true. I mean, the thing we would love, as we've said before in other episodes, is we want a proper sequel to this film.
Yes.
And doing the older hit guy now. And with Minnie Driver still around, still great, still it would be fun to see what's happened to the two of them.
Put it in the John Wick universe. I mean,
we know that kind of thing.
We know that
in that vein.
We know Martin likes to kill dogs.
No, that was an accident. You kill one dog.
I know Keanu Reeves is now all in on the John Wick side. I would love to see a reboot of Constantine with Cusack as Constantine.
Oh,
he'd look the part.
Yes, I think he has a skill for the noirish roles.
Even maybe the Punisher.
Ooh,
it could work.
Interesting.
He's not quite toned enough for the Punisher, maybe, but
when he was younger, he would have made a very good Sandman.
Oh yeah.
I think of one of my favorite. It's a DC comic, The Human Target.
I was right. So you were thinking that kind of the Milligan version as well would be good, because the TV series of Human Target had almost nothing to do with the comic book. Fun though it was, but it had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, but but I think that shares some DNA with something like Grosse Pointe Blank, where it's a
Yes.
character who's charming, who engages in the action, but it's really about using their their wits in order to put themselves in a situation where they're intended to be the target of an assassination and they have to get out of it.
Yeah, he would have been very good as a human target if they'd stuck to the way the comic book does it. That would have been quite nifty. Oh, God, there's an alternative universe project I wish I'd seen.
Well,
that's also a TV show that needs a new
yes.
release.
If you haven't read the most recent, I think it's the Tom King Human Target. It's a
Yeah, no, I haven't read
fantastic
King's take on it
noir
yet.
story. Yeah.
Yeah. I confess to not. Basically, there's a certain generation beyond which I don't think I've read anything from any of the big publishers. Like, my taste kind of goes to a certain point and goes, whoop. But I am occasionally dipping the toe in the water with some of the more recent guys, not least because I was telling you earlier about off camera about one of my friends who's the animation producer, the person he was working with. He's one of the two Toms. Who's made it big, so that's kind of persuaded me to go back and read stuff. But I think my favorite DC era was the 80s. The Question,
Yes.
Dennis Cowan and Denny O'Neil. That's my completely one of my all-time favorite series. And there's a guy again who I would love to see even if we go for Rene Montoya's version, but The Question is a hero who I think deserves a TV show. And again, I could see, because he's a trench coat guy, you can see Cusack carrying off that whole Vic Sage journalist thing. I guess Cusack could have, again, it would have been when he was a little bit younger to be able to do the fight scenes, but still a great actor.
So in this minute, I think that one of the things that I had never noticed before, and it ties into what we're talking about, is there's a video store connected to the Ultimart.
Yes.
That I never noticed until I freeze framed as Jon Cusack and Carl are running away, and that I was trying to make out what film posters they're advertising, but I can't quite make them out.
Yeah, I've tried looking for those before, and I've never quite caught it.
Yeah, I was wondering if it was a deep cut, like if that's One Crazy Summer or something like that.
Probably.
But they don't quite look like that. But I have to say, this minute has the Carl's line at the end where Jon Cusack asks him if he's okay is one of my favorite lines in the film. I'm hurt, I'm pissed, I've got to find a new job. it's one of the best bits of the entire film.
It just grounds that moment, but it's still funny.
I love that it's got the traditional like leaping because there's an explosion behind you sequence, and then immediately goes to this whole section that you never have after an explosion.
Yes.
Of Jon Cusack just casually lying there watching everything burn. And this
cool.
kid, like, not like, screaming about his ears ringing and his eardrums being burst or like something impaled some limb or something, but just like immediately back to the practicalities.
Yes.
Like, yeah, there are moments in this film where the tropes that they're playing to, it undermines them intentionally, and that's one of them that I just it's very, very nicely done for me.
I think it's interesting too because we get that very quick shot of the government agents watching the Ultimart blow up, and
whoa,
and it's fascinating to me. Maybe it's the culture of the times, but it seems like in a contemporary context, if they're looking for an excuse to kill Martin Blank, him running away from a exploding convenience store seems to be all the excuse that they would need. And they shouldn't have to get any other pretext to confront him.
Yeah.
Or to say nothing of the fact that there was this gunfight that apparently the government agents didn't notice just immediately prior to this.
Well, yeah, I mean, these two government agents, I mean, really, they're just like the classic, let's just sit there and see what happens. Oh, look, our job's done for us. Put a tick in the file. Let's go get coffee, they're those kind of guys. This is the whole point of the parody, isn't it? There's, like, this minute begins with him running, having seen what's in the microwave, and it's that bit
Yeah.
where they allow him to stare at the microwave for way longer than a professional killer should, just to, like, there's a moment of fascination, like he's like, oh, look at that. And you kind of think, is he fascinated professionally? Is he thinking, that was going to take, so if you eat this that much, it'll take this long to, and then, I've got to run. Or is it just him going, I could die now. Finally, I've been waiting for this.
Yes.
Oh wait, I got Debbie. You know, like there's so many ways you can take that moment, and it's such a gorgeous, gorgeous moment. But you then also have this whole business of, as you say, you know, the insanity of it afterwards. When we're out there, and it's like we go from action movie to comedy to social realism for a minute to, you know, comedic value of the spooks. It's just such a, again, wonderful tonal shifts. They've happened so fast.
Yeah. And it's interesting to me that there's no moment in the film, and this could have been a moment where Martin confronts his own mortality. Like, he nearly died multiple times in the last 60 seconds. But him confronting his mortality is not an aspect of this story. You know, he doesn't repent or reform himself because he is worried about dying. That he never seems to have any concern about that at all. Like, he reconnects with Debbie because he likes Debbie, not because he's trying to necessarily get out of the assassin game. And I think it's interesting that he's there contemplating the explosion, but it doesn't faze him in any way.
Yeah,
it's some kind of purely artistic expression of the flames and the composition, and it's not.
It's like in Rogue One when Ben Mendelsohn looks at the Death Star destroying the planet and it says, like, my God, it's beautiful.
Yeah. It's exactly that. It's another Zen aspect of Grosse Pointe Blank.
So one other thing that I noticed on rewatching this minute over and over and over again is the way the music's cut. So obviously this is Motorhead's Ace of Spades, and it's we saw it in the previous minutes as kind of noise pollution from this kid's headphones, and it stays as that right up until you cut outside the store, and it's like it's being played from speakers in front of the store, kind of like Debi's radio broadcast. And then once it started doing that, even when you briefly cut back inside again, it's still playing at full volume.
Yes. It's like earlier with the Guns N' Roses when he goes to the Ultimart the first time. It's an interesting. Is it transitioning from diegetic music to non-diegetic music as he exits the store? And maybe that's also why Carl doesn't mention his eardrums being blown out, because he's already functionally deaf because he was listening to Motorhead at such a high volume.
That could well be.
Oh dear! Again, another trope from TV tropes is the perfect cancellation by headphones.
Yes,
in an era when headphones didn't cancel, you somehow do not hear anything outside. But also Ace of Spades. I mean, it's just there is something about that whole 80s action genre that's being parodied here. That combination of big hair, heavy metal, obviously not Motorhead. That's different. That's we respect Lemmy in this household, right? For all kinds of reasons. But there is something about the way the big gymnasium style muscled guys took over from the realistic guys in the 70s. The guys who understood that you didn't need to go to the gym to be tough, and then you get these 80s guys making these big ass over the top action movies in which loud guitars are also a part of how the movies are sold, and the way heavy metal grows, and the macho-ness of what, frankly, looking back on it, is ludicrously homoerotic. And you're like, when was this ever manly? You like really, how did we not see this? And there's something about that being nicely tuned here with the kind of use of one of the best ever hard rock tracks ever, and just we know that it's over the top. We know it's silly, and that's the point. That's why that track is with that scene. And I also don't think you can ever do. I don't think I've seen a grocery store shootout since then, and I think that's right. I feel like Grosse Pointe Blank killed it for everyone.
Maybe. I mean, I think it was also pretty dead even before this.
Yeah,
right? Like
pretty much.
Maybe Steven Seagal killed it, and
yes,
this just,
all that's left is to parody it, to send it up.
Yeah.
And I think that Grosse Pointe Blank pulls it off just because it's unapologetic about pulling all these tropes in. It's very self-aware in the way it does it. It's not trying to do anything other than have fun with all of these tropes.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. Half of what makes this fun is that they've cast the kind of guy who would be in a proper action movie, along with Cusack doing exactly what you should do in this film and doing it well.
Yeah,
like he gives Chow Yun-fat a run for his money here, right? And that is the thing. It needs to be taken seriously to be seen to be funny, and I think that's kind of how it works.
I mean, it definitely does a lot of the John Woo stuff, right? Like it's martial arts action with guns. In a complete counterpoint to what you see in American action movies, which is much more of the grosser wet work approach to action films.
I've just remembered the film that killed the grocery store shootout for me, which funnily enough comes out when Seagal's making his, and that's Loaded Weapon 1. National Lampoon's Loaded Weapon 1. It's such a great one. And that's 92. So 93, sorry. 93. So 4 years before this. But that shootout is hysterical.
Yes, it's very that seems of a piece with this shootout. This one is, the only thing we're missing is Martin grabbing a snack while he's running out of the store or something along those lines. That's he already has his gum, I suppose.
And the other thing we're missing is that, because this is where it is pure parody, is the bit in Loaded Weapon 1 where Estevez is shooting and he steps out from behind to shoot, and and then the bad guy steps out next to him to shoot down the same way, and then they realize, they're like, oh, like that would be just,
I guess that happens later with Grocer at the very end, almost that exact same scene.
Actually, that is kind of there. That's true, actually. No, they definitely have fun with the overtop elements of all of this and the way it's done. I think,
Do you think Martin feels catharsis with the fact that the Ultimart that was built on top of his house is destroyed, or does that just amplify his existential crisis?
No, I think he's enjoying it. I think that's exactly why he's lying there on the grass in the sun going, look at that. I think he's genuinely loving the fact that it has gone up in flames. He's coming down off the high, or as Hannibal would have said, the jazz. He's coming down and he's like, isn't that pretty? It's gone. It's gone up in smoke. It's burning. The fact that that's in in regular speed, and then you cut to the explosion and there's bits of slow motion used, to enhance the beauty. I mean, that's definitely, I don't think he's having a crisis. I think he's loving it.
And we get, one more time what's sort of his catchphrase, it's not me.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Never him. It's not me. No, of course not, dude.
Not personal, Carl.
No, exactly. It's never personal. Why would it be personal? I just stuck a weapon in your face and shot you. Why would that be personal? Oh, there's a gun culture commentary right in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh dear. But that and so this minute ends and this sequence ends, and thank you, John, for being with us all this week on this wonderful moment in the film, because it is still so much fun.
Yes, it's been a great selection of minutes. I feel like, this 5 minutes, you get Jeremy Piven, you get Jon Cusack, you get Benny Urquidez, you get some great action. It's really encapsulates all the things that are great about this film. Even the soundtrack. We got some good Motorhead. I'd say for me, this one of the things I always remember about this film is this introduced me to some bands that I went on to become big fans of, like the Violent Femmes, for example.
Great band.
And as a kid growing up, and being somewhat sheltered, those movie soundtracks were like a great mixtape that introduced me to a whole bunch of stuff I wouldn't have heard otherwise.
I think it's really hard for me to look at pre-90s soundtracks. Well, not even that. Let's go back to Beverly Hills Cop again, which we mentioned in the previous episode.
Yeah.
There is a point from Beverly Hills Cop onwards where the art of the song-based soundtrack compared to the score just rapidly shot up and ascended in the quality and the way it was put together, rather than just being a let's sell this stuff for the label because the music label wants to piggyback off the movie. It becomes a thing of its own. And so many of my favorite albums over the years have been these soundtracks. Right? Like I have rebought the Crow soundtrack so often because it has been, people borrow it from me and never give it back. Right? Like that, Watchmen in paperback, and what's the other thing? There's like a film as well where I've given them away and people never give them back, and I always have to get them. And I'm like, I'm happy for them to have it. But like 90s, man, like everyone was trying to be Tarantino, and yet everybody kind of did something different and better sometimes when they tried hard enough. Grosse Pointe Blank works beautifully.
Yes.
High Fidelity, okay, we're into the 2000s, but that is a 90s soundtrack. That's perfect. Go has a brilliant soundtrack. Just so many good combinations of bands and sounds and songs, and always a blend, always a kind of sense of this is what's now, this is what we used to listen to, this is what is coming in that we think is going to be cool. Singles, literally that album comes out before grunge kicks off big.
Yeah.
Everybody on that album goes huge, barring two bands, I think. And, but it's a perfect album. It's a perfect encapsulation of Seattle in 92. And it's just, there's nothing like that. There wasn't anything like that before those films, and I don't think anybody does it as well since. Maybe Barbie last year. I don't know. Maybe.
Good soundtrack.
Barbie, that soundtrack understood what it was putting together, how and why. But it's been a while since I've bought a soundtrack and gone, oh yeah, this is it. This is how it works. There's an art. There's an art there, guys. You all got to go back to school and learn how to do it again. Ask Nelson. Yep. Call Nelson up and tell her we sent you guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kathy Nelson is responsible for quite a few of these, right? So,
well, that was the thing when we looked up what she did. Like the majority of the great 90s ones, she's involved with.
Yeah.
And I think it also has to do with directors who shot music video, who understand music. Australian Greek Alex Proyas, for The Crow, and Andrew Fleming for The Craft, and Threesome, and all those kind of films. And what's the name of the guy who directed Heathers? What was his name? Because he went on to do Truth About Cats and Dogs, which is a great little film from this time period. Really underrated, terrific soundtrack. Mystery Men, It's just, oh man, what a time period.
All right. And with that,
this was minute 45 of the Grosse Pointe Blank podcast, Debi Radio 79.5 FM, featuring your hosts, co-writers, co-producers, Dev Soligar and Hugh David.
Today's guest, as he has been all this week, is Jon Strawn. Jon, where can we find more about you?
I'd say, look me up on Discord, Star Wars Minute servers, and iFanboy servers. But I'm on Letterboxd under Johnny Flash. You can read little capsule reviews, something I do to keep myself creatively engaged so my day job doesn't just overwhelm me every day.
Fair enough.
You can find us on all good podcast players as well as on YouTube if you want to watch us. We also have an X, aka Twitter account, and Spotify at Debi Radio for all of those, and on our website debiradio.com. And for all of those, it is Debi spelt Debi.
And finally, if you want to actually come and chat with us, find the Facebook listeners group, Debi Radio 79.5 FM Fan Club. Once more and finally, that is DEBI Radio.
Sure was clear that all of this was new. Concentrating hard like a little girl, smoking for the first time. It wasn't done